Welcome everyone to the 2018 Preschool Mindfulness Summit. I'm really happy to introduce our next guest. Dr. Amy Saltzman is here with us today. She's a holistic doctor, a mindfulness coach, a researcher, and she's the author of A Still Quiet Place, a mindfulness program for teaching children and teens to ease stress and difficult emotions, and also a CD called Still Quiet Place, Mindfulness for Young Children, and those are both available on Amazon, and we'll have a link to those if you click on the speaker info button, as well as to Dr. Saltzman's website. So welcome, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
Great. So we have quite a diverse audience at this summit. We have parents and teachers and caregivers, and some have quite a bit of experience with mindfulness and some are new to mindfulness. So for the people who are new, could you just tell us what mindfulness is and how it's different from meditation, and maybe what some of the different types of mindfulness practice are?
Yeah, so when I'm working with children from 3 to 93, my definition of mindfulness is paying attention here and now with kindness and curiosity so we can choose our behavior. And I want to break that down a little bit. So paying attention here and now means doing our best not to be focused on the past or worrying or fantasizing about the future. With kindness and curiosity really means it's important how we pay attention, because a lot of times if we're just paying attention to ourselves and we don't bring in those components of kindness and curiosity, we can actually be pretty hard on ourselves. And then so we can choose our behavior when I'm aware of what I'm thinking and feeling and how my body is responding, and then when I'm aware of who's around me and maybe how they're thinking and feeling and what's happening, then I have all the information I need to choose my behavior. And we'll talk probably in a little while about what's reasonable to expect for a preschool or kindergarten age child within that definition. And in terms of mindfulness and how it is or isn't meditation, my own practice is I use the word mindfulness the way I've just described it. I don't generally use the word meditation, especially when I'm working like in public school settings, because there are many forms of meditation, and I think mindfulness is its own distinct thing. And I want to be clear that I'm teaching that particular way of paying attention and not one of the 1,000 of other possibilities.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's a very clear definition. So when we talk about mindfulness in young children, how old can we really start to teach children mindfulness, and how young can we go, and then maybe talk about some of these expectations with the different age groups.
Yeah, so I'm going to start actually with a personal story. So when my son was around 3, my daughter was 6 months old, and she was very mobile and getting into his stuff and pulling my attention frequently. And we were sitting in our upstairs hallway, and my son wanted to do something and I said no, and he felt very sad. And off the top of my head, not really knowing what I was doing, I said, do you want to do a SADS meditation? And he said yes. And we'll do that in a little while, a feelings meditation. But what it allowed him to do was to be aware of what he was feeling without his feelings being in charge of him. So one of the things I like to say is mindfulness helps us have our feelings without our feelings having us.
Right.
And so he we did the practice, and at the end he was just kind of done. And like I said, I think we'll do the practice in a minute. But I do feel like preschool and kindergarten age kids, the way I teach is I introduce them to the still quiet place, which is really just the stillness between the in-breath and the out-breath. And then what I say is that when you're having a hard time or whatever, you can go to your still quiet place and meet your thoughts and feelings there, and your still quiet place can hold all those thoughts and feelings. And still quiet place is really my kids' translation of the adult word for awareness. Because if you say awareness to a 4-year-old, that's not really going to make any sense. But if you say you can be in your still quiet place and notice your thoughts and feelings, that usually works. Okay. So what I find is that really young children can know that they have a still quiet place and know that it's kind of a place of refuge or comfort for when they're having a difficult time or just when they need a break or want to chill out. It's not till really about 3rd or 4th grade maybe that they can really do the last part of my definition about choosing their behavior. And so I think as adults wanting to share mindfulness with young children, we need to be clear about our own expectations.
Right. Yeah. So we were just talking before, a lot of other curriculum has been pushed down in schools, and we don't want to just take adult practices and have children do them, do we? Or even things for older kids. So making sure it's developmentally appropriate is really important. So could you give us some ideas of practical examples of how we can help young children? And I know you've got a meditation that maybe we can.
Yeah, and I think what I'll do is, if it's okay with you, I'll combine the still quiet place practice and the feelings practice, and we can everybody can do it together. So wherever you are sitting, and perhaps closing your eyes and simply allowing the attention to rest on the breath. And if it's helpful, you can put your hand on your belly and you can feel the belly expand with the in-breath. And release with the out-breath. And see if you can pay close enough attention that you can feel the whole in-breath from the very beginning where the belly starts to expand, all the way to where the belly and perhaps the hand are still. And then see if you can feel the whole out-breath from the very beginning where the belly starts to release, all the way through to where the belly and the hand are still. And now see if you can rest your attention in the still quiet place between the in-breath and the out-breath. There's just a little pause there. And the other still quiet place between the out-breath and the in-breath. And perhaps as you're breathing and feeling the rhythm of the breath and the stillness, you can realize that this stillness and quietness is always inside you. It's with you when you're breathing in. It's with you when the breath is still. It's with you when you're breathing out. It's with you when the breath is still. It's with you when you're happy or sad or angry or afraid. This stillness and quietness is always inside of you, and you can return to it just by following the breath. So take 3 more slow, deep breaths, feeling the in-breath and the stillness, and the out-breath and the stillness. And when you're ready, you can gently open your eyes and I will let you know that I chose to break up the practices. So I thought we could chat about that one, or you could ask any questions about that one, and then later we can do the feelings practice.
Okay. Wow, that was beautiful. Very nice. Yeah, that's, I mean, you just calm right down, and such a beautiful thing to be able to do, because you can take, once you learn it and once we teach kids this and parents do it for themselves, they can take it anywhere, can't they? And it doesn't cost anything, and you can pull it out when you need it. So,
Yeah. And I think we have to be a little bit careful as grown-ups to make sure that we don't give the implication that practicing mindfulness means we're always calm. So to me, practicing mindfulness means that I'm aware of what's happening in the moment. So if I'm furious,
yeah,
I'm aware that I'm furious. And the interesting part, or that I'm feeling furious, would be a better phrasing.
yeah.
So that the feeling of furiousness can be there, but then the stillness and quietness can watch it. And part of what I get to choose, and this is more for adults than for kids, is, am I going to be primarily focused in the furiousness, or am I going to be primarily resting in the stillness and quietness? But when we suggest to kids that mindfulness, they should feel calm, if
Right.
they are feeling angry, sad, afraid, whatever, either they feel like mindfulness doesn't work, or like they're doing it wrong.
Right.
And it's like,
Right.
nope, if you notice that you were angry and your fists were clenched and you wanted to punch that kid in the nose because he took your crayons,
Yeah.
that's mindfulness.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you can get to the point where you can choose not to punch the kid in the nose because he took your crayons, that's applied mindfulness.
Right. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Good point. Good point. So, yeah. So, would you recommend that parents kind of do this together with children? It's something like that they can do anytime in the day, or
Yeah, so I mean, in general, like if I'm working with kids in a preschool, or I'm working with kids in my private practice, uh, I often have them download my CD from iTunes, and then they work their way through the practices kind of 1 week at a time.
right.
When I'm working with them, I get to talk about it with them, but people can certainly do that on their own. Generally, the best time to do it is to build it into your bedtime routine. So brush teeth, read a story, do mindfulness, give kisses and hugs, and say goodnight. If you know that you have like a particularly tricky transition in your day for your
Yeah.
child, you might play it in the car when you pick them up from school, or go sit in a park and listen to it with headphones when you pick them up from school. I find for most parents, honestly, with young children, like early in the morning, except maybe on a weekend when things are slower, um, just the process of getting the shoes and the lunch bag and the whatever is enough, and trying to add mindfulness into that doesn't always go so well.
Right. Yes, very hectic in the mornings. Okay, so are there any other strategies that you would recommend for parents, that they could, just simple things they can do at home to help
Yeah,
their
so we'll
child?
do the feelings practice,
Okay,
and I gave you a link to that, so I think you're
yeah,
going to set up for people to be able to use that. But we'll do the feelings practice that I described using with my son.
yeah,
And then we can also talk about some other things that it's important for parents to keep in mind and in heart as they introduce mindfulness to their kids, or teachers if they're doing it in the
yeah.
classroom. So we'll do
Okay,
one more practice, and then we'll go from there.
all right.
So again, sitting and closing your eyes, feeling the breath in the belly, and when you're ready, simply bring your attention to whatever feeling or feelings are here right now. And sometimes feelings have very ordinary names, like happy or sad or angry. And other times they may have more unusual names like stormy or fiery or empty. So simply notice what feeling or feelings are here right now. And now see if you can notice where the feeling lives in your body. So maybe it's a warmth in your chest, or a tightness in your belly, or an ache in your head. Just notice where the feeling lives in your body. And now notice or imagine if the feeling has a color or colors. And if it doesn't have a color, that's fine. And see if you can sense how the feeling feels. Is it big? Is it soft? Is it cold? Is it moving? Is it bumpy? Just noticing how the feeling feels in your body. And now noticing if the feeling has a sound. And maybe it does, and maybe it doesn't. And often it's enough just to meet our feelings in our still, quiet place. And sometimes it's very helpful to ask them what they want from us. And usually feelings want something simple like time or attention or a way to express themselves. And sometimes they want something more complicated, and we can talk about that. But for right now, just ask the feeling what it wants from you. And if it's not sure, that's okay. And whenever you're ready, thank your feeling and take 3 slow, deep breaths. And open your eyes and expand your attention to include the room. So that practice is really intended to help people of all ages really be aware of their feelings and how the feelings show up as physical manifestations in the body. Because often our body is the first place that tells us that we're having a feeling, and often we ignore that information and we think we're fine, we're fine, we're fine, and then we explode. So if we can start to pay attention to that information earlier, we have a lot more possibility of choosing our behavior when we're a little bit afraid or a little bit angry than when we're at the top of the anger wave.
Right. Yeah. Right. So, are there times when you think parents maybe shouldn't teach mindfulness to their children?
So yeah, it's interesting because I just said at the top of the anger wave. So there's actually research on emotion theory, and the basic research on emotion theory, I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but emotions kind of have a natural time course. And at the bottom, right, when we are first having those hints of an emotion, there you can kind of bypass the wave. But at the top is something called the refractory period. And when we're in the refractory period, we're in fight, flight, or freeze. And you can be the most brilliant parent, teacher, or counselor on the planet. And if you're trying to talk to a child who's in the refractory period, it's just not going to make any difference. Or if it makes any difference, it may make the peak of the wave even higher. Right. So at that point, when our child's tantruming or, kind of over the edge, The important thing for us to do is to practice our mindfulness
Right.
and wait till the wave passes, and then you can have a conversation. I mean, you need to make sure that the child's safe and the people around the child are safe, and that nothing is going to get, broken or whatever. But it's not the time at the top of the refractory period to teach mindfulness or have a thoughtful conversation. It's just not going to work. And so we have to deal with our own frustration and wanting things to be different and just wishing they would just calm down. We have to do our own mindfulness for that when they're falling apart.
Right, right. And I know you mentioned before also, I think about the whole calm down thing. Sometimes parents just want their child to calm down, and that's probably not just an appropriate time to. I'm kind of.
I mean, I think you can do really simple things. You can breathe with them.
Yeah.
You can maybe hold them, maybe not. You can say, I'm going to sit over here and practice my mindfulness, and if you want to join me. But often the more we are kind of forcing them to be a certain way, the more they're going to resist. Whereas if we can just breathe through it, then eventually they will also learn that they can breathe through it. But if we're yelling at them, practice your mindfulness, that doesn't really help that much. So, if we want them to practice, we have to be living demonstrations of the practice. So if we want them to learn that they can have their feelings without their feelings having them, then we need to be able to do that for ourselves.
Yeah, great. Okay, we're coming almost to the end, but I just wondered if you could tell us a bit more about your program that's in your book, the Still Quiet Place book for children and teens that's available on Amazon.
Yeah, so the program is an adaptation of the standard MBSR program, and it's really broken down for parents, teachers, counselors to teach to kids of all ages, really from 3 up. There are certain exercises clearly that are not appropriate for really young kids, so that in each section there's like a book recommendation that kind of teaches the principle instead of a particular exercise. And so the book is available on Amazon for people who are really interested. I have an online course where they can go through the whole program. And again, you'll usually be in a cohort with people from around the world. And people working with different ages. So some people will be working with what I call littles. And some people will be working with teenagers. Sometimes the principles for both are the same, sometimes not. But people can look at that offering online. And then I think for parents, the most useful resource is actually going to be the CD, which they can get on Amazon or through iTunes. And I had a thought in my head. Let's see if I can get it back. Oh, yeah, that was the last thought. I also think it's really two things. First of all, I hope that you have on in your other speakers some people who are offering more things like mindful games and sensory things. So I didn't cover those particular things, but those are super helpful. So I hope people will listen to the other ones as well. And the other thing I think is super useful for parents is for us or teachers or whoever for us to do what I call mindfulness out loud, which means when you're getting frustrated, you can say, oh, I notice like my face is getting hot, my fists are clenching, and my heart is beating really fast, and I'm starting to feel angry, and I'm going to go sit down or take a walk or have a cup of tea, and I'll talk to you about this when I'm ready. Because when we show that to our kids, then that's one way that they learn it without saying, well, you have to do your mindfulness now. We're actually showing them how to do it.
Yeah, that's so important, I think. So interesting, because it's lots of those kind of little things that we do throughout the day, isn't it? Then kids pick up everything. So when you just make it explicit, I think it really does encourage it to become a culture in a house or in a school, and that's just what
Right.
we
And
do.
when it's really, you'll know when it's really a culture when your kid says to you, "Mommy, take some
Yeah.
deep breaths."
Yeah, exactly. Do you want some tea? Yeah, exactly. That's lovely. Well, thank you so much for coming on the summit and sharing those beautiful practices and all that information. And I'm sure a lot of people would like to look into your program and your book. So again, if you click on the speaker information link, that information will be there. Also the freebie, there's a freebie button, and you can download the meditation that we did today and try that out with your child. So thank you once again, Amy. It was lovely
Thanks
talking
for
with you
having,
and learning from you.
yeah, and thanks for having me, and thanks for hosting the whole summit. So,
Yeah, being fun. Great. All right. Thank you. Thank you again.
thank you.